Rhabdomancy is the art of divination using a rod, wand, staff, stick, or arrow. There are numerous forms of rhabdomancy, including Cleromancy, the casting of lots, and belomancy, the art of divination by the use of arrows. Both Cleromancy and belomancy are found in the Bible in apostate versions and in forms approved by the Lord. Belomancy, divination by arrow, was a common practice in the ancient Near East. There is one mention of it in the Old Testament found in the book of Ezekiel. The king of Babylon shakes arrows to help him decide which direction he should take during his military campaign. Certainly, the use of belomancy by the king of Babylon was not approved of by the Lord. However, the Lord did approve of another form of arrow divination. In fact, he provided the arrows that were to be used. Belomancy is found in the Book of Mormon, though in a disguised form, the Liahona. Though the pointers in the Liahona were called spindles, they acted as arrows, pointing the direction in which Lehi and his family should go. In the case of the king of Babylon, he learned the direction he should go by shaking the arrows in his quiver, and then seeing in which direction the arrow or arrows pointed. In Lehi's case, the spindle pointed the direction without physical intervention. The ball or director was acted upon by faith and obedience to its instructions. Cleromancy, the casting of lots, was a more common form of divination in the ancient Near East and is well attested in the Scriptures. The Lord incorporated the casting of lots into the law of Moses. The selection of the scapegoat was made by lots. At the command of the Lord, the promised land was divided into tribal inheritances by Cleromancy. After commanding his young son Solomon to build the house of God, David established the divisions of priestly service among the sons of Aaron. In part, he did so by the casting of lots. In New Testament times, the first replacement of a vacancy among the apostles was decided by lots. In the Book of Mormon, Nephi and his brethren cast lots to decide who should go to the house of Laban for the brass plates. In our dispensation, the Lord directed that the order of speaking at a meeting of the High Council of the Church was to be determined by casting lots by numbers. In every case, the use of lots was considered a form of prophecy, where the mechanical means, often a stick, was believed to indicate the will of God. As the proverb states, man casts the lot, but the Lord decides the outcome. The herald's staff, or magician's wand, was widely used as a means of obtaining prophecy. The Greek historian Herodotus relates that soothsayers in ancient Scythia used willow wands to foretell the future. Herodotus reports that another group of Scythian shamans, known as the Inaris, used strips of bark to enable prophecy. The Roman Tacitus wrote that the early German peoples consulted pieces of a twig. In each of these cases, the soothsayer holds the wand, twig, or strip of bark while making the prophecy. This detail is important with reference to Aaron's use of the rod. Aaron held his staff in his hands when vocalizing the prophecy made by Moses in the angelic tongue. There are other ancient traditions of divination by staffs or sticks. The early Zhou dynasty of China used stalks of the yarrow plant to discern the future. A female shaman in Norse tradition was called a vulva. The name means a wand or staff carrier. The Chinese fortune-telling practice of Cao Chim uses marked flat sticks. There are traditions that indicate that the staffs actually spoke prophetically. Prophecy was not discerned indirectly by the seer or shaman, but was communicated directly by the staff orally. The Native American talking stick is used during tribal councils to indicate the right to speak. At times, the talking stick represents the authority of the chief to make official pronouncements. More importantly, talking sticks are ceremonial tokens of the original talking stick, one which actually spoke. The Yaquis of the southwestern United States remember a time long before the conquest of the Spanish where there was a talking stick which reached from the ground to the sky. This stick, so the legend goes, spoke in a language that could not be understood even by the wisest of men. Only Yamamuli understood the stick and related its message to the people. While the talking stick of the Yaquis was a mythic one, during the time of the prophet Hosea, the Israelites consulted staffs that did, in fact, speak. At least that was the claim. The Hebrew translated as declareth in the King James Version is nagad, which is usually translated as tell or declare. As Strong's exhaustive concordance explains, nagad is derived from a primitive root, which means to stand boldly out opposite. By implication, it means to announce, always by word of mouth. The staff declared the oracle to the ancient Israelites verbally. The New International Version translation of the verse is plainer on this point. There is a wider mythic context to the talking staff or stick, that of talking trees. As we shall see from the perspective of the mythic archetypes, the caduceus and sacred trees, such as the Tree of Life, are versions of each other. The underlying planetary archetype is the same. It should not come as any surprise, then, that if there are talking staves, there are also talking trees. Indeed, this is the case. In fact, the mythic archetype of the talking tree is found throughout the world and persists in modern culture to this day. In many cases, especially the more ancient versions, the talking tree is a means of obtaining prophecy. The most famous Greek oracle next to Delphi was Dodona. According to Herodotus, the trees in a sacred grove next to the sanctuary of Zeus were endowed with the power to speak and do so prophetically. It was the rustling of the leaves of the tree that was considered the voice of Zeus. Apollodorus testified that Jason cut a timber from the speaking oak of Dodona and fitted it on the prow of his ship, the Argo. The timber retained the ability to speak and provide oracles. Alexander the Great, in a letter to Aristotle, related that he visited two Indian oracle trees called the Tree of the Sun and the Tree of the Moon. Both had the power to speak and foretell the future in both Indian and Greek. When Alexander reached the two trees, he asked about his fate. The Tree of the Sun prophesied in Indian that the king would die of poisoning. The Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil was a form of the talking tree, at least iconographically. The tree never speaks in the Old Testament account. However, the serpent tempting Eve does speak. The most prominent iconographic representation of the serpent shows it entwined around the trunk of the tree. Symbolically, the tree and the serpent are one entity. When the serpent speaks, the tree speaks. The serpent coiled around the tree trunk takes the form of the caduceus, the serpent staff of heralds, and the staff of Aaron. It is a well-known fact that the herald's staff, the caduceus, was one of many mythic emblems derived from the axis mundi. This connection between heaven and earth provided the hero, whether a messenger of the gods or a seer, to communicate the will of the gods living in the heavenly realm. The axis mundi is a universal mythic motif, briefly described as the cosmic axis spanning heaven and earth. It was located at Earth's North Pole. The axis mundi was visible to ancient man and was variously described and portrayed. While the caduceus was derived from the axis mundi, so were the sacred trees. Tree and staff came from the same archetype, the cosmic axis. So too did the serpents, which we will address shortly. Coming from the same archetype, all three share similar attributes. As we have repeatedly noted before, the archetype of the axis mundi proceeded from a very real physical source, the polar configuration. The polar configuration is a modern name for the ancient congregation of planets situated along Earth's north axis: Earth, Mars, Venus, and Saturn. From the point of view of the ancient earthbound observer, the planetary arrangement took many forms, hence the numerous variations of the axis mundi. For the purposes of this discussion, we will focus on those forms from which the tree and staff were derived. One of the most common motifs is that of the world mountain. The mountain in this recreation is the red pyramidal form extending downward from Mars toward the Earth. The mountain was often considered twin-peaked due to the intersection with the glowing crescent on Saturn. In biblical terms, this was Mount Zion and Mount Ararat. At times, the form below Mars narrowed, taking the form of a column, or for our purposes here, the trunk of the world tree. The plasma streamers extending from Venus formed the branches of the tree. This was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. This form is also the basis for the sacred oak at the oracle of Dodona and the trees of the sun and moon consulted by Alexander the Great. The twin peaks of the world mountain combined with the world nail form the basis for the forked or circle staff of god and hero alike. The most common form of the caduceus was a staff entwined by one or two snakes. The serpentine staff originated from the same celestial form as the other forms of the staff, the axis mundi. The axis mundi, whatever form it took, was a giant Birkeland current extending between the red planet and Earth. Birkeland currents often give the appearance of a filamentary, twisted rope structure. The twisted filaments of the electrical discharge gave the appearance of a giant serpent or two serpents coiled around the axis mundi. The staff or rod used for divination often carried markings. Cleromancy in particular used marked lots. The marking of the staff is yet another byproduct of the underlying archetype. The markings of the rod, whether letter or number or magical symbol, were an inherent part of the structure of the polar configuration. Writing systems of all types originated in the heavens. Jewish lore provides the Hebrew version of the invention of the alphabet. Aaron's rod had the initials of the Hebrew names of the 10 plagues. Ancient writing systems were simply pictographs, representations of the endless forms of the polar configuration. From an iconographic or symbolic point of view, the very elements of the planetary configuration that form the basis of the herald's staff, the caduceus, were the same elements that formed its markings. The staff and its markings were one and the same. These same principles held true for the Liahona, the spherical divination device specially prepared by the Lord to give Lehi and his family direction and occasional prophecy, was modeled after the polar configuration. The celestial form of the ball was the circular enclosure surrounding the planets, while the 4 plasma streamers formed the arrows of the director. The writings found by Lehi on the Liahona parallel the markings on the staff, both sets proceeding from the various sub-elements of the planetary configuration. The planetary archetypes also explain the presence of talking trees and staffs in the mythologies of the ancient world and their use in divination. The pillar of the axis mundi formed both the trunk of the sacred world tree and the shaft of the herald's staff. This same column, as we have demonstrated earlier, was also the tongue of angels. It was this tongue that literally spoke to ancient mankind. The staff and tree were the tongue, and all 3 produced articulate speech in ancient times.